Welcome back, guys. Today, I want to start my 2025 college football playoff round one, quote unquote, wild card playoff round for the 2025 college football playoffs. We had 4 games to predict, and for the first time ever, we have 4 teams hosting playoff games in their own buildings, which will lead to some very hype atmospheres for the games to come. And let's get this one started. We only got 4 games, so I'll try to breeze through this as safely as possible. And we're going to start off with the Battle of Indiana, where the Indiana Hoosiers will be taking on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. For Indiana, they finished their regular season 11-1, with their only loss coming to the Ohio State. Last time we saw Indiana, they pretty much blew out Purdue, and there was not much to be said about that game because Purdue is a pretty terrible team. Meanwhile, for Notre Dame, they also went 11-1, and many people thought that their season was going to come to an end after getting upset by Northern Illinois. But since that game, Notre Dame has pretty much been in cruise control, albeit they did have one close game against Louisville, but other than that, their path to the playoff has been pretty easy, and they were in consideration of getting that bye week, but they end up choosing against that and have Notre Dame settle for, I believe, seed number 6. I think it's 6 versus 10. This game will be played on a Friday night on ESPN ABC. I thought this game was gonna be on TNT, but oh well. And with this game being at home, it's gonna be a very hype atmosphere. Notre Dame favored at home. I have to go with Notre Dame to win. But for Indiana, if you lose, you should not be upset on how the result went. It might be a minute if they get back to the postseason, but they should be really proud as they became the most surprising team in college football in 2025. Moving right along, we got the Saturday slate of games. We starting off with the SMU Mustangs, aka not Alabama, taking on the Penn State Nittany Lions. SMU finished the regular season 11-1, but we last saw them losing the ACC title game, where they were at one point they were trailing 24-7, but the Mustangs, they came roaring back to eventually tie the game in regulation. They ended up losing on a field goal, but them tying it was what got them in the postseason. For Penn State, they too went 11-1 in the regular season, with their only regular season loss coming to the Ohio State Buckeyes. But they did get to play in the Big Ten championship game, where they ultimately fell short to Oregon. I ended up predicting Penn State in that game because why not? And go show you that James Franklin still doesn't know how to beat the big teams. Luckily, he's taking on SMU, and many people think SMU might be the weakest team in the playoffs, with them and Clemson, which we'll talk about in a bit. But I think SMU is going to give this team a run for their money. Fortunately, this game is not going to be at night, so the atmosphere won't be as hyped as it could be. And honestly, and while I do think SMU has the biggest chance of all the road teams, spoiler alert, to get a win, I still got to go with Penn State to win this game. I think they're the better team. I think it's going to be in Pennsylvania, so the weather might be in the play. But I will not be surprised if SMU pulls this off. Just keep that in mind. And following that, we have the Clemson Tigers taking on the Texas Longhorns. Clemson, how the hell did they get in this position? Well, let me explain. They finished the regular season 9-3, which is the worst record of all the playoff teams, but their last regular season loss actually came to South Carolina. And they only had just one conference loss on the season. They lost 2 non-conference games. So they were able to get to play in the ACC title game, where they had to play for their playoff lives, and they jumped out to a 24-7 lead, but they ultimately let SMU come back to tie the game, and it was ultimately a long field goal was what won it for Clemson. Meanwhile, for Texas, they also finished 11-1 regular season, but they suffered 2 losses to Georgia. They did lose to them in the SEC title game, but in a game where I thought Texas had a lot of opportunities to win, but ultimately they could not get it done. And with Texas being a double-digit favorite in this one, yeah, I don't see a I don't know if I see a scenario where Texas lose this game, but it's a playoff game. You never know what's going to happen. But I do think Clemson. I think Texas won't cover. I'll give it that. And last but not least, we have the Tennessee Volunteers taking on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Both teams finishing 10-2. But the last time we saw Tennessee, they beat Vanderbilt. And last time we saw the Ohio State Buckeyes, the got taken away by their arch rivals, Michigan. I'm gonna start referring to Michigan as the Michigan Wolverines. But for this game, this will be the night game. This will be the playoff capper of the week of the first round one weekend. And I honestly think this is going to be one of the, it all depends on which Tennessee team shows up. If the Tennessee team which showed offensive progression as the season goes on, they show up, I think this is going to be a fun playoff game. If they don't show up, Ohio State might run the dog on them. Luckily, Tennessee has a good defense, one of the best defenses in the league. So I don't think it's going to be that high scoring. And this is another game I went back and forth with, but I'm ultimately going to settle with the Ohio State Buckeyes to win the game. And that concludes my round one playoff predictions. This is what the bracket looked like as of today. Next time you see it, there will be some changes. So tell me what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Gamble safely, and I'll see you next time.